My sister stole my identity for a $50K loan, so I froze her accounts. I was checking my credit score like I do every month when I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a loan application for $50,000 that I never applied for. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through the details. The application was approved 3 weeks ago, and the money had already been dispersed. Someone had used my social security number, my address, and even my employment information. The worst part was that I recognized the email address listed as the contact. It belonged to my sister. My first instinct was to call her immediately, but something held me back. Maybe it was the memory of all the times she had borrowed money from me and never paid it back. Or maybe it was the way she had been acting lately, avoiding family gatherings and being evasive whenever anyone asked about her finances. I decided to dig deeper before confronting her. I pulled up the loan documents and saw that she had even forged my signature. The handwriting was close but not quite right. She had practiced but not enough. I spent the next 2 hours going through every detail of the loan. She had applied through an online lender that specialized in quick personal loans. The interest rate was astronomical, nearly 30%. The monthly payments were over $2,000. I felt sick thinking about how this would destroy my credit if I didn't act fast. I called the lender's fraud hotline and explained the situation. They told me I needed to file a police report and provide documentation proving my identity had been stolen. The police station was crowded when I arrived the next morning. I sat in a plastic chair for 40 minutes before an officer called my name. He was younger than I expected, probably fresh out of the academy. I handed him the printed loan documents and explained what had happened. He looked at the papers with a frown and asked if I had any idea who might have done this. I hesitated before telling him about my sister. His expression changed when I mentioned that the thief was a family member. He warned me that pressing charges against her could mean serious jail time. After filing the report, I drove to my sister's apartment complex. Her car wasn't in the parking lot, which was unusual for a weekday afternoon. I knocked on her door anyway, but got no answer. Her neighbor, an elderly woman who was watering plants on her balcony, told me that my sister had been acting strange lately. She said there had been several expensive deliveries to her apartment in the past few weeks, including what looked like furniture and electronics. My stomach dropped as I realized she was probably spending the stolen money. I decided to check her social media accounts to see if I could find any clues about where she might be. Her Instagram was full of photos from expensive restaurants and shopping trips that she definitely couldn't afford on her salary. There were pictures of designer handbags, jewelry, and even a weekend trip to a resort. She had been living it up with my money while I was working extra hours to save for a house down payment. The anger I felt was unlike anything I had experienced before. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom asking if I wanted to come to dinner on Sunday. She mentioned that my sister would be there too. I realized this might be my chance to confront her in person. I spent the rest of the week documenting everything I could find about the fraudulent loan. I printed bank statements, credit reports, and even screenshots of her social media posts. I wanted to be prepared for whatever excuses she might come up with. Sunday dinner at my parents' house was always a big production. My mom had made her famous pot roast, and the smell filled the entire house. My sister arrived 30 minutes late, which was typical for her. She was wearing a designer dress that I recognized from one of her Instagram posts. She hugged everyone and acted like nothing was wrong. During dinner, she kept checking her phone and seemed distracted. When my dad asked how she was doing financially, she gave a vague answer about picking up extra shifts. After dinner, I followed her outside when she went to smoke. The backyard was quiet except for the sound of our neighbor's dog barking. I took a deep breath and asked her directly about the loan. Her face went pale and she dropped her cigarette. She started crying and said she was in terrible debt from credit cards and needed the money to avoid bankruptcy. She begged me not to tell our parents and promised she would pay back every penny. I told her it was too late for promises and that I had already filed a police report. She became angry when she realized I was serious about pressing charges. She accused me of being selfish and said I had always been the favorite child. She claimed that our parents had paid for my college while she had to take out loans. The argument got heated, and she started screaming that I was ruining her life. My parents came outside to see what was happening, and I had to explain the entire situation to them right there in the backyard. My parents were devastated when they learned what she had done. My father sat down heavily in his lawn chair and put his head in his hands. My mother started crying and asked how she could have raised a daughter who would steal from her own brother. My sister tried to play the victim, saying she was desperate and didn't know what else to do. But my parents weren't buying it. They told her she needed to figure out how to fix this mess immediately. The next few weeks were a nightmare of phone calls and paperwork. The lender was cooperating with the fraud investigation, but they warned me that it could take months to resolve. In the meantime, the fraudulent loan was still showing up on my credit report, and it had already caused my credit score to drop significantly. I was supposed to close on a house the following month, but my mortgage application was now in jeopardy because of the unauthorized debt. My sister called me several times, alternating between apologies and accusations. She claimed she had a plan to pay back the money, but when I asked for details, she became evasive. I suspected she was trying to take out more loans or borrow money from other family members. I decided I needed to take more drastic action to protect myself and prevent her from causing more damage. I started researching ways to freeze her access to credit and financial accounts. I discovered that since she had my personal information, she could potentially open more accounts in my name. I placed fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus and froze my credit completely. But I wanted to go further. I found out that I could file complaints with various financial institutions where she might have accounts, citing her use of my stolen identity information. Through some detective work involving mutual friends, I learned that she had accounts at several banks and credit unions. I gathered all the documentation from the fraud case and submitted formal complaints to each institution. I explained that she had stolen my identity and might be using the information to commit additional fraud. Within a week, I started getting notifications that various accounts associated with her name were being investigated and temporarily frozen. The calls from my sister became more frequent and desperate. She accused me of trying to destroy her life and claimed I was being vindictive. She said she couldn't access her own money to pay rent or buy groceries. I reminded her that she had $50,000 of stolen money that she needed to return. She hung up on me and didn't contact me again for several days. My parents were caught in the middle of our conflict. My mother called me crying, saying that my sister was threatening to cut contact with the family if I didn't drop the charges. My father was more supportive, saying that actions have consequences and that she needed to face the reality of what she had done. The stress was taking a toll on everyone, but I knew I couldn't back down. If I let her get away with this, she would probably do it again. The breakthrough came when I received a call from a detective who had been assigned to my case. He told me that my sister had been arrested for attempting to use fraudulent identification at a bank. Apparently, she had tried to open a new account using fake documents that included some of my personal information. The bank's security system had flagged the attempt, and they called the police. She was now facing multiple felony charges related to identity theft and fraud. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness when I heard the news. Relief because it meant the authorities were taking the case seriously, and sadness because my sister was now facing serious legal consequences. The detective explained that she would likely be offered a plea deal if she agreed to cooperate and pay restitution. He said that with her cooperation, I might be able to get the fraudulent loan removed from my credit report more quickly. My sister's arrest made the local news because the dollar amount involved was significant. Several of our mutual friends reached out to me, expressing shock and asking if I needed support. Some of them admitted that she had tried to borrow money from them recently, using stories about family emergencies. I realized that her financial problems were much worse than I had initially thought, and that I was probably not her first victim. The court proceedings dragged on for months. My sister initially pleaded not guilty, but her lawyer eventually advised her to accept a plea deal. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison, with the possibility of parole in 9 months if she demonstrated good behavior and completed a financial counseling program. She was also ordered to pay full restitution, including the loan amount plus interest and fees. During this time, I was working with the lender and credit agencies to repair the damage to my credit. The process was slow and frustrating, requiring multiple phone calls and submissions of the same documents over and over again. My house purchase was delayed by 6 months, but eventually I was able to get approved for a mortgage once the fraudulent loan was removed from my credit report. The hardest part of the whole experience was dealing with the impact on my family relationships. My parents aged visibly during the months of legal proceedings. My mother blamed herself for not recognizing the signs of my sister's financial troubles earlier. My father became withdrawn and rarely mentioned my sister's name. Extended family members took sides, with some saying I was too harsh and others supporting my decision to press charges. I visited my sister in prison once, about 3 months into her sentence. She looked smaller somehow, wearing the standard orange jumpsuit and sitting across from me at a metal table. She apologized again and said she finally understood the magnitude of what she had done. She claimed she was getting help with her spending addiction and was determined to make things right when she got out. I wanted to believe her, but trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt easily. When she was released on parole, she moved back in with our parents temporarily. She got a job at a local retail store and began making monthly payments toward the restitution. The payments were small, only a few $100s a month, which meant it would take years to fully repay what she had stolen. But at least she was making an effort, and her criminal record meant she would have difficulty accessing credit in the future. The final twist came almost a year later when I received a call from a private investigator. He explained that he was working on behalf of another victim who believed my sister had stolen their identity before she targeted me. Apparently, she had been operating a more sophisticated scheme than anyone had realized, using stolen personal information to open multiple accounts and take out several loans. The investigator wanted to know if I would be willing to testify about my experience. I agreed to help with the investigation, which led to additional charges being filed against my sister. It turned out that she had victimized at least 6 other people over the course of 2 years, stealing a total of nearly $200,000. The new charges meant she would have to serve additional prison time, and she would be responsible for much more restitution than just what she owed me. The revelation that I wasn't her only victim actually made me feel better about my decision to press charges. If I had let her get away with stealing from me, she would have continued to hurt other people. By taking action, I had helped stop a pattern of criminal behavior that was escalating. My parents finally understood that their daughter's problems were much more serious than they had initially believed. Today, almost 3 years later, I'm living in the house I was able to buy once my credit was restored. My sister is serving a 5-year sentence for multiple counts of identity theft and fraud. She writes letters occasionally, usually around holidays, expressing remorse and asking for forgiveness. I haven't decided whether I'll maintain a relationship with her when she gets out, but I hope she's genuinely changed. The experience taught me important lessons about protecting personal information and the warning signs of financial fraud. I now check my credit report monthly and have all my accounts set up with fraud alerts. I've also learned that sometimes the people closest to us are capable of betraying our trust in ways we never imagined. But I don't regret the actions I took to protect myself and hold her accountable for her crimes. Looking back, I realized that freezing her accounts was just the beginning of a much larger reckoning. What started as a simple case of identity theft revealed a complex web of criminal activity that affected multiple families. While the legal proceedings were stressful and emotionally draining, I'm glad I didn't let family loyalty prevent me from doing what was right. Sometimes protecting yourself means making difficult decisions that others might not understand, but living with the consequences of an action would have been much worse.